Welcome. Let's talk about bread. I want to talk about the nuts and bolts. I want to go right through it, so please listen to the end. I know this will make a big change in your life. When we buy bread, the majority of all bread that sits on a shelf is processed, enriched, and refined to some degree. Now, what does that mean? Anytime you process anything, you're changing it. Anytime you refine something, you're taking things out, particularly in the bread. And that grain is being stripped of the bran, the germ, and the nutrients, leaving only the endosperm. And the endosperm has very little nutrients left, maybe a little protein. But this endosperm is primarily the smooth, soft part. So therefore, when they take those vitamins and nutrients out, they have to enrich it back in. And what does that mean? That they're putting artificial vitamins and nutrients back into something that was organic naturally. So that bread primarily is all carbs. And what does that mean? That means that this is a high glycemic food. This will rapidly get digested and cause substantial fluctuations in your blood sugar. That bread will turn into glucose and spike your blood sugar levels up so high and so quick. Therefore, the pancreas has to secrete more insulin, and that will continue to spike as well. And this becomes a vicious cycle. Carbs turning into glucose, glucose spiking up, we get more insulin, we continue to get more insulin, therefore the carbs start to drop and get lower. The brain perceives a problem, so you start to crave more carbs, and you continue to eat more. When there's too much insulin, that becomes inflammatory to the body. Remember, insulin is what allows glucose to get into the cells in your body. Eventually, you become insulin resistant. Now the glucose is not getting into the cells. There becomes an issue. You then start developing type 2 diabetes, and the condition will lead to more serious problems. Remember that those sugars can only go 3 places. 1, you can burn it right away if you're doing exercise. 2, it gets stored as glycogen in your muscle or liver. Or 3, it will get converted into fat. Those excessive sugars are inflammatory. And this will lead to excessive production of advanced glycation end products that we call AGEs. And what does that mean? Inflammation leads to heart disease, cancer, diabetes, plaquing in the arteries. It leads to neurogenic diseases. And those excessive carbs and sugars leads to that oxidative stress that causes a rise in your LDLs, your low-density lipoproteins. And this causes more plaquing within the vessels of your arteries. This can lead to heart attack and stroke. And those adipocytes, which are your fat cells, secretes cytokines. And those cytokines cause pathophysiological changes seen in metabolic syndrome, which causes systemic insulin resistance and systemic inflammation throughout your body. And unfortunately, when those breads are processed and refined and stripped from its nutrients and fibers, and they just try to add back those nutrients, they never add back that fiber. Otherwise, the glucose and insulin will continue to spike. And this puts a burden on the cells of your body as well as your pancreas. The one thing the body does not like is a fluctuation of high and low glucose levels. Because when those sugar levels continue to rapidly rise and fall, this leads to activation of microglia, which is the brain's immune cells. And this leads to an inflammatory cascade in the brain, or neuroinflammation. This will immediately slow down the transmission speed of signals in the brain, leading to a feeling of brain fog and a drop in brain endurance. Now we can see the long-term damage of chronic sugars, because it's inflammatory. This is what leads to those neurogenic diseases in our brain. So now you're probably thinking, what are the best breads that you should be eating to keep you healthy? Those breads that are not refined and processed. Those breads that do not sit on the shelf. The majority of healthy breads are not going to last long. So if you go to the freezer section, you will find many healthy breads because they are frozen with little to no preservatives. Sprouted grain breads, whole grain breads, seeded breads, as well as sourdough breads are all healthy breads. They have the fiber, they are intact, and they will all have a lower glycemic index. That means they will digest slowly throughout your bloodstream, where you will not get that spike or that fall ever again. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please pass this on to someone who can benefit, a loved one, a friend. Leave your comments below because there will be many. And most important, make it a great day. I'm Dr. Alan Mandell.